There you go.
Awesome. All right. Well, welcome everybody to MVP Office Hours. My name is Jared Kingston, one of the co-leaders here. I'm joined by Dale Ziegler and Jackie Travieso. You guys want to introduce yourself? Say hi.
Hello, everyone. This is Jackie out of South Carolina, closest metropolitan area, Charlotte. If you're in my area, look me up and let's grab some coffee and let's talk Salesforce.
And hey, this is Dale, also in Kansas City with Jared. And just going to say we are proud to announce that if you're ever in Kansas City, we have an entire app dedicated to all the barbecue places we would love to take you to some and talk Salesforce.
True story. We won't get into it now, but we do have the best barbecue in the world, as a fact, in case you're wondering. All right, so we like to kick off MVP Office Hours every time just by covering what's coming up events wise. So there are world tours. A couple have already happened. We've got New York, I know, next week. Definitely, if they're in your area or close by, I recommend you check those out. They're free events, which are awesome, and a lot of good content goes into those events, as well as a lot of opportunities to go ask people questions in person and get in-person demos and walkthroughs. So definitely check those out. If you are, well, I guess it's too late to travel down there now, but yesterday was Down Under Dreamin', or was it 2 days ago? Time changes, right? But 2019 events are certainly are working their way up, so we'll keep you apprised of those. But a lot of events coming out, and definitely join your local user group if you haven't. And there's a lot of opportunity there. So let's jump to the next slide here. Oh yes, good reminder. So if you haven't yet, you need to, after this meeting or during this meeting, go link your Trailhead and Web Assessor accounts for your certifications, as they will be lost if you do not do that. As well as note that you can no longer get 2 releases behind for your release exams. So you need to take those in your respective windows. So make sure you're up to date on those as well within Trailhead. They're nice and streamlined for you. So definitely check that out. Make sure you get that taken care of.
So something else I found out this week from one of the certification PMs at Salesforce is, so December 14th is the hard line in the sand for existing certifications. That's no ifs, ands, or buts. Once we get past 12/14, Web Assessor is still what you'll use to register for your initial exams, not the maintenance, just the initial exams. And then once you have a certification, you will still go through these same steps to link up your accounts. December 14th is officially just the line in the sand for this first pass. That hadn't really been communicated out much or at all. I did send some messages to people just to find out, because I have a few employees in our shop who are in that boat right now. 0 certifications. They want to get certified, and 12/14 is way too close. So just for reference, that's what's going to happen after 12/14.
All right. Yeah, no, good call out. All right, so real quick, if we go to the next slide here, before we jump into questions, just a reminder, if you haven't been on MVP Office Hours before, we hold this every, the first and third Friday of every month. So our next call will be just before the Christmas holiday on 12/21. We try to make it easy for you with a registration link that you can just bookmark. We'll add additional sessions to it after each one, so definitely bookmark that. And we're all about problem solving together. You'll see that hashtag, and really what that means, right, is that it doesn't matter if you're an MVP or not, right? We're all here to help each other out. So if you have experiences and whatever the question is or issue is, definitely speak up and try to help out. We'll do our best to provide approach pointers, etc., to try to get to the answer there. We'll post the recording as well as any materials, resources that we record during the call out to the community in Twitter. And just because this is an open webinar, we just ask you mute yourself unless you're speaking. And if you have a question, we'll either have dead space where we're asking, or you can just raise your hand in the meeting and we'll get to that. Marty and Jen are like, let's go. And I like it. So they've got their hand raised. Announce yourself. We certainly see that in the meeting, but, like to put a name with a voice. And if you have any resources, like I said, share them in the chat. We'll record them. And if it gets to it, right, we'll pass you the controls and you can share your screen and we can try to talk through it. One thing to note, I'm not sure if this is on the next slide or not, but we have a website here, mvpofficehours.info, that gives you all the information about the office hours. We have several different groups here if you want to join them as well, EMEA, Portuguese, etc. So definitely check out that site. It gives you all the information, also allows you to subscribe to our email list that we send out each go around, give you the heads up on the registration so you can register. So definitely check that out.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, on our usual call out for Portuguese, I don't see Carlos on here, but you don't have to know Portuguese to be on the Portuguese office hours. Carlos is phenomenal at translating from English to Portuguese, Spanish as well. He is multilingual, so don't let the Portuguese factor overwhelm you if you want to jump in and help out. Everybody can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And this is Jackie. It's a great time. I've been on a couple of their calls, and they're really looking for a lot of support. They've got a unique situation that their culture, it seems to be that they do their job, and at 5 o'clock then everybody goes home on to the rest of their life, and they're trying to cultivate more of a community spirit through these calls and really get people more ingrained in the Ohana and the supporting of each other. So I think that if we can continue to show them the example of and getting them excited about giving back, I think that might help their efforts as well.
Yeah, for sure. And then lastly, before we get going here, we want to call out, we've called out the last couple of times, we have a YouTube channel that we post all of these recordings to. That's what we'll use to share out the recording link. So you can go subscribe to this channel, get those. You can see we have 64 right now. You'll get those sent straight to your inbox. So if you want to sign up, definitely go out there and get those recordings sent right to you. And you don't have to monitor anything else. So check that out. All right. Anything else, Dale, Jackie, before we get going here?
Now let's get the party started.
Yep.
All right. So I think I couldn't quite tell who jumped in first, but I know, Rob, you were quick to the gun on getting yourself in the queue here. So go ahead, and then Jen and Marty will get to you right after. And Rob, Rob, you're muted. There you go.
How's the audio?
Good.
Nice.
Hear it.
It's nice to talk to you all again. Small shameless plug. We had Ned about 2 weeks ago, our Northeast Dreaming, first time inaugural event. Blew out the attendance expectation. We had 487 people registered and about 454 showed up, even though it was snowing in the morning.
Solid job. Very nice.
That's awesome.
And we're already planning for next year, a little bit earlier in the year, so we don't stub toes with French Touch and Florida Dream and a few of the others. And we're going to shoot for 600 next year, and it's completely achievable. Also, we gave $5,000 to a local charity, and we're sending $5,000 to the American Red Cross for Paradise, California.
Wow.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
I'll accept it on behalf of the other 11 people who work their fannies off. Trust me, and you all know that. Okay, let's get to a question.
It takes an Ohana village, right?
It does take an Ohana village. Thanks, Jackie. Mm-hmm. By the way, Jackie, I learned in a podcast on public radio that the meaning of the word queue is very different from culture to culture. So in England, for example, they line up in a queue individually, what we call in the States single file. But in Yugoslavia, they line up kind of horizontally. You five guys, you're all kind of shoulder to shoulder, side by side. No one would think of cutting the man in front of them, but all five of them are in queue.
Interesting.
Very interesting, which brings me to kind of a conversation about parallel approval processing, which I've recently discovered cannot be done by the process builder. No way to do that. Having said that, I'm kind of reconfiguring an approval process where the approval recipient is a queue. The queue is made up of groups, and the groups are made up of roles. What concerns me is when the approval request goes out, is the manager of the role going to see it? Now, in the group setting is an enable hierarchy flag. I have it unchecked or disabled. And yet, even though it's unchecked, if I take a role like product manager, it's clear that the manager of the product manager in the role hierarchy is a member of the queue. And I'm a little worried about how this behavior occurs. Wow, that total silence is deafening. I wonder if I fell off the call.
Can you?
No, I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah. Can you say that to me one more time so I make sure I'm fully understanding what your issue is?
I'm putting it in the chat. So the essential question is, does the manager of a queue member see an approval request to a queue member? And below it is the structure. Structure is that a user is in a role is in a group is in a queue, and a queue is listed as an approver choice.
Have you possibly started building this in a sandbox that you can share your screen?
Yes, I have. It's just that the thing with, and I'm happy to, it's just that these things are kind of hard to test because they're sending emails and I'm not the recipient of the email because the email address is not me. So,
of course.
The building of it is not much trouble. It's it's everything else.
Might be good. Well, rather than me trying to build an approval process on the fly, if you are, I mean, we could at least read the screen to pick up some of those, the keywords. Here, let's just give it a shot. Go ahead and go back to the Zoom window and hit share.
Okay, hold on one sec.
Well, before we jump into this stuff, could Rob explain a little bit what does he mean? Like, what is he trying to do? What is a problem that he's trying to solve with these parallel approval processes? Because I didn't get that. For that.
That was kind of background. Sorry. That was kind of background. The need is that I build an approval process which is essentially role-based because, that's good best practice. You don't want to have individuals named in an approval process because people change roles, people change companies, and then, you kind of have to rebuild things all over again. But you can't pick a role as a recipient in an approval step. You can, however, pick a queue as a recipient in an approval step. So I've made what you might call singular queues, one person in the queue. But I want to make sure that I'm not sending any emails to the to the role member's manager because he has access to the queue because of the role hierarchy. Still not clear, is it?
No, I think I got it. I mean, I got what the problem is. I understand. Thank you for clarifying.
Sure. Okay,
So
not a problem.
I'm trying to step through creating a new queue, and I'm not seeing anything in here that mentions managers. You can choose users, you can choose roles and subordinates.
Am I sharing?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, I wasn't quite expecting this, but I'll see. Actually, Let's see how quickly I can drive down through this. Here's an approval request. And let's just go to this step because it happens to be the complicated step. When you are choosing the approver within the step, you have an option to approve somebody manually, or automatically assign to a queue, or automatically assign to more than one queue. And you only have either a user, a queue, or a related user. You can't pick a role. If you could pick a role here, I wouldn't be on the phone. This would be much easier. So my option is to select a queue. So every one of these is a queue. Let's take a look at the queue in another window. Okay, here's a queue. Here's the product manager queue, and that queue is made up of a group.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Let's drill down further. We're going down onion layer by onion layer. Here's the group. I'm using the same name for nomenclature. Here's the group, and it is comprised of a role. And that role is the person. Okay, that
Right.
person. However, if I go to this fellow's manager, this guy here,
Mhm.
I'm going to see that the manager is in the queue because he is the manager of a queue member. And so my concern is, going back to the approval process, which is here, when these approval requests go out, is the manager going to see one? I don't need him to see one. I'm not sending it to him.
Well, I think it depends on so this is this is the downside of going into a custom functionality. This looks like a really awesome solution, but it's custom. It's not necessarily the native way of how Salesforce probably intended it. So yeah, I think a manager probably could see it. I think where you then
Now keep in mind, because
Rob, you want to know if the manager is going to get the email. That was your question, right?
precisely, Jackie.
Okay.
And you
So
see
in
here,
Sandbox, you can change a user's email to, let's say, just a general Gmail account that you have access to.
Yep.
And it's going to send the email, because I just did this. It's going to send the email to that new account asking you to confirm it.
Mhm.
Whereas I think in production, it does it the opposite, where it sends it to the old email saying, we're gonna update it. So you
Clever.
can test this in Sandbox, going to that manager, changing the email address to something that is going to go to you.
Yep.
And confirm that behavior.
That's awesome. That
Yeah.
by itself is gold. Thank you, Jackie.
Yes. So then the next question is, if it does do that and you confirm that, does that kill where you're going?
Yeah.
With this?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
does completely? Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay, but I will cross that Rubik, that Rhine, that Danube when I get to that river. Okay. Thank you. Jackie, you had to look it up, didn't you?
Oh, no, that's me.
Well, no, I did. I was testing it while I was talking to you, because I'm like, I've done this. How, because when you create a Sandbox, you get all these fake email addresses.
Yeah.
So I knew that there was a way to change it.
That's
So.
perfect.
All
Super.
right. Well, good luck with that.
Okay. Thanks everybody for the time. Go ahead.
Jen's hand is raised.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you. My question was, is it possible to do, how difficult is it to create a validation rule, like say opportunities and opportunity products, if there's a field in the opportunity product that I wanted to make sure was filled in before I can switch to the stage? How difficult would it be to build a validation rule, or is it even possible?
A validation rule? No,
Mhm.
because the validation rule can either be run on the object itself or anything parent, not child level. So if you're wanting the opportunity stage to not change until
Mhm.
things are filled out at a child level,
Yeah.
that's the VR wouldn't be able to do that, but you could, if you really wanted to dive into it, probably build a process builder triggering a flow to go look at to make sure that everything is filled out, but then that gets hairy and ambiguous error messages if the thing isn't filled out. Like it's not an awesome experience.
Simplest solution for that would be an Apex trigger that will validate that and throw an error.
Right.
No. No. My thought was actually, and it would be that I would create a kind of like a roll-up summary field on the opportunity level, but I couldn't do it if on a formula. If it's filled in, I can't roll up a formula.
You can't?
So I would need, no, you can't roll up a formula.
I swear I've done it before, but maybe I haven't. Okay.
Yeah, so I was gonna try do a formula on the product level, and then I would roll it up and see if it was like a simple 1-0 if it's filled in, or 0, and roll it up. But I couldn't do it, so I had to do a process builder. I don't know if it's a really stupid way to do it, but I could do a process builder. If that field is filled in, then I would populate a field in the opportunity. So if that field is not populated, then I would have the validation rule of the opportunity.
So instead of doing a formula field, you could persist that value by creating a custom field using a formula to populate it, and then you'd be able to roll that up kind of another way.
What was that again?
If instead of creating a formula field, you create a custom field and use the formula to populate the data, that would be a regular field with a regular value that's persisted instead of calculated, then you'd be able to roll that value up.
I think every time Corey speaks, we have Decepticons a landing.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of feedback, Corey. Maybe you could type your suggestion in chat.
How about now? Is this better?
You sound better, but there's still some feedback that comes with you. Like signal interference type of feedback. I hear no one now.
How about now?
Okay.
Okay, you're all there. Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah.
I'm
Much
looking
better.
for a place with it's some kind of like HVAC background noise. What I was suggesting is that instead of creating a formula field of formula type, you could create a regular field that's populated by using a formula, and then you get data that's persisted. And once you're persisting data, you are able to roll it up. So it's kind of, if that's the best way to accomplish what you're trying to do, that's another way to get there.
Which object would that field go on, though?
On the child.
But,
So
but a validation
I
rule.
didn't quite get the regular field populated by a formula.
So yeah, instead of creating a field that's type formula, you can create a regular field and then create a formula to populate the field. Does that make sense? So if you create, in other words, so let's say you create a regular field, say it's text, and then you create a workflow rule that populates that regular field as text, then the value is persisted, and then you could subsequently create a roll up to the parent off of that field.
Yeah, that's kind of along of what I was thinking, was do a process builder to populate that field.
Yeah, it's an indirect way of doing it. You could also do all of that with process builder.
Well, and so Corey, I just want to make sure I understand. You're saying so at the child object, so in this case, line item, a formula field is the field update to a non-formula field. within that same child object. And then that result gets rolled up with all of its siblings to the parent.
Right. So
Okay,
once
and then-
once you've done that, you're able to do roll-ups. I think that's the
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, technically, if you wanted to go super simple, you wouldn't even need a process builder on that child object. That's a workflow rule.
yeah, it totally can be done with a workflow rule.
So workflow rules are not going away?
Well, it depends on who you listen to. I don't think it's been officially stated that they're going away.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done on Process Builder to allow them to deprecate workflow rules.
So on the technical side, would it be better to do it as a workflow on the child level, or I could do a process builder and just immediately roll it up to the parent level? Because on a process builder, I can.
So official statement from Salesforce that I have heard a few times from recent releases that they basically don't recommend to use workflow rules anymore, but move all your automations to process builders and flows and visual flows and lightning flows and all that stuff. It's not going away. It's going to be there for a while, but that's the recommendation kind of as a best practice that Salesforce sort of steers everyone towards.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
also,
I've moved most of mine. I just haven't moved my time-dependent workflows because I kind of like how I can check if my time-dependent
also-
workflows are working.
yeah, hearing some of this indirect conversation, how you guys trying to use these admin tools to work around things, problems that are not solvable, it makes me a little bit concerned that if you do this kind of stuff, I face a few orgs that are configured that way, which is absolutely undocumented. It's impossible to understand how these automations are triggering each other. So it would be wise to well document this process along the way of what you're doing. If you're doing this type of interaction, adding additional fields, populating these fields from different places, and then trying to check whether that object actually has that field populated, rather than having like a one Apex trigger on an object that actually has to be checked, that has all the logic in it. It makes it very, very hard to understand and unravel that ball of wax when you're actually looking at hundreds of automations, right? So it's good to have that documented well.
Yeah, so as an admin, when I create a field and I'm just using it, say for a validation rule, I always call that out in the description so that if somebody else, another admin looks at it, they know, okay, this field, it's not used on any of the page layouts, but it is used in, say I'm using this for the validation rule and I reference that validation rule on the description.
Isn't there, this is Jackie, isn't there a time and a place for workflow? Because workflow happens, then something happens, and then process builder is triggered, I think is what I remember reading.
I actually just bookmarked that off of a post earlier today. Let me go grab that. Give me 2 seconds here.
And while you're looking for that, Jen, if you're looking for a tool for documenting all of these things that Igor is saying that need to be done, elements.cloud is fantastic for that.
Elements? Okay.
Yep, elements.cloud.
Yeah, that is a very good tool if you have a license for it and your organization actually has that tool. Otherwise, description is good too.
Yeah, there's a free, description works, but for big picture and process, so process mapping, the process mapping portion is free within Elements Cloud. When you want to get into, and they just renamed it, Catalyst, when you want to get into pulling in documentation and other linkage that is necessary for these really complex orgs, that is a paid license. I think it's like $760 a year for an author, that's nothing.
Yeah.
Compared to the effort that it would take to create all kinds of other, documentation and trying to orchestrate that.
Yeah, one thing I was going to say is there is a trail out on Trailhead that takes you through, and it may be that one that you have up there at the top of your results. Dale, but as I think Igor was saying, yeah, Salesforce is actually, yeah, they're really recommending that you map out your processes, and this trail is really nice because it helps you. It also helps you think through how to even move some workflow over into a process builder, because really what they're recommending is, even at a high level, right, put have one process, wherever possible, right, have one process per object that has then nested processes within there, right? So have a process, within a process, and use, some formula language within there for things that are new versus updated to delineate, but try as much as possible to move that into one, so you don't have any issues with varying automation.
So I'm going to counter that statement, Jared. I fully agree with you. For those of us who are experienced in Salesforce, in process automation, all that kind of stuff, if workflow rules aren't going away, I would still recommend the very beginning admin to use workflow rules just to get comfortable with how the automation works, because it can get real scary real fast in Process Builder if you don't fully appreciate the order of when everything within your business process is supposed to happen. Process Builder and Flow give anybody the power to be a developer. You're also given the power, and with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
No,
for sure. And I think, and I still, to be honest, right, I still definitely use for things, especially like Corey was saying, like even a workflow to update a field. For those smaller ones, I'll use workflow from time to time. But yeah, it was just an interesting trail to go through as you start to think about automation, especially going forward within Salesforce and the path that they're going down.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. I think that was my question, but thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have to hop off, so thank you.
Thank you.
Problem.
There's a question in the chat about, is AppExchange on, or is Elements.cloud in the AppExchange? And no, it is not. It's its own standalone app thing.
All right, Marty, let's go. What's your question?
Hi, this is Marty. So my question is, the request was, if someone creates a contact, to be able to copy the address from the account. And so when I went looking in the Lightning roadmap, it said this is now done. And when I was double checking, it is done if I'm creating a contact from the related list in the account. But if I'm creating a contact just purely from a new contact from the contact object, it is not there. And so my main question is, since we have MVPs on the line, is what's the best way to tell Salesforce you disagree with the fact that it's done, or am I missing something?
So actually, that's how it's always been. And starting with Classic, if you come in from the account, because that account contact relationship is native, it's not a custom relationship, Salesforce put a smidge of trigger in there that said, oh, hey, by the way, on the new contact create, why don't you pass in the address as well? And what the roadmap is saying is they've now also completed that same functionality for Lightning. When to your point about creating a contact from scratch, not from the account related list, that's how it's always been, because that special little line of a trigger that says go pass this in while you're at it, that's not going to run in real time. And it didn't run in Classic, and it's probably not going to run in Lightning. So what they mean by that is when creating from an account, because their expected behavior is you're going to create your contacts from related list. You're going to create all child data from the parent object. That's the behavior they try to enforce, whether they explicitly document that or not. That's the behavior that they say is best practice.
Got it. So what I ended up doing was I just created a process builder to do it, because you can't, I couldn't think of a way to force people to only create contacts from the related list. Does that make sense?
Oh, it absolutely makes
Okay.
sense.
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
All right, Aaron, you have a question.
Why can we not get her unmuted?
Does it? I don't see a phone unless she's dialed in through the number there.
She actually even said earlier in the chat, my audio isn't working even though I tested prior to the call.
That phone number there, Dale, in the meeting, can you unmute that one?
Yes, hold on. Aaron?
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
There we go.
Yes.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you, guys. Okay, thanks so much. I did have one question, but then you guys mentioned Process Builder, which has been giving me agita for the past 2 weeks. Couple things. I built a process in the Process Builder that triggers a flow, 2 separate ones. One adds a managed license. The other adds 2 permission sets on user activation, right? And then when the user is deactivated, everything goes away, clean slate. And so it wasn't easy, I have to tell you. It really, when you said before it gets scary quickly, you're right, it really did. And one issue that I had was it kept failing the unit test. Now, I'm not a developer. And this is what I was getting back, the feedback from the developers, that it was the mixed DML operation, which I believe is the setup and non-setup objects, right? Because it was the user. So the thing is, it did pass the ANT test that when the developer decided to go down that route. And we spoke to Salesforce, and I know what happened, but I felt that I really wasn't getting the root cause. Has anybody experienced this?
But do you know what your code coverage number is?
No, and we don't have that at future. It's all insert, but it was really strange, and we've never had this issue. And it was the first time that our unit testing ever included, that we ever had a process builder.
Oh, okay. So, sorry, finish your thought. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, so talking to Mark Ross here recently, if you try to deploy Process Builder and it is active when you put it in the change set, it will then count against your code coverage.
Sure, it wasn't active.
It was not active.
We made sure. I am telling you, we twisted and bent and bobbed and weaved through everything, and we just kept getting feedback, just the failing. The feedback was failing. And one time I spoke to somebody from Salesforce, and they said that they were triggering at the same time. So it was one, because I separated them. So one was a license, one was the permission set. And then with the permission set, I had to add a schedule. Even though it's 0 time, when you add a schedule, then it doesn't trigger simultaneously. But that never helped either.
Have you tried having so the process builder wakes up the first flow. Have you tried having that flow wake up the second flow so that in the end, the process builder is only waking up one flow and then that process runs linear? Does it have to be simultaneous?
Well, it kind of, well, no, we want the permission sets and then the license. I did get it working. I was able to get it into production. I had to modify the flow a little bit because as far as the permission sets, I just had create, and we reactivate users a lot. And some of them had a permission set. So the flow was just to create. So I had to put in a couple of decisions. But what I realized is nobody is really comfortable with Process Builder. Like each Salesforce support person I spoke to had a different perspective and a different resolution on this. So it was a little strange. So I was curious, what's the best place for the knowledge, to obtain the knowledge of the Process Builder? Because I felt like they were throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing what stuck, to tell you the truth.
Well, I would suspect that, depending who you talk with support and which level, there are certainly different people that have different knowledge of level to details, right? Level of detail.
Mm-hmm.
So that may be the issue that you're feeling. But I think they probably not looking at it from a process builder perspective, but they're looking at it as a problem of you deploying and failing these unit tests because you have triggers and other things happening. Which is typical for these type of mixed automations where you have triggers, process builders, workflows, all working on the same object, sometimes triggering on the same conditions, and going sometimes round and round, and causing some problems, which sometimes you don't see that in your dev sandbox for various reasons, but production may have more things going on, and obviously certain users and certain conditions that you may not have in your sandbox with data, right? So you have some data conditions. So those all come into play. Mixed LML exception is a fairly well-known and documented aspect. There are setup objects in Salesforce that simply will not allow you to, once you change, let's say, a user object, or you update some other object, after that, you can't go back and update that user again, or vice versa. Like if you did insert some account and then you try to update the user, they may collide and say, hey, you can't do that. Those are like operational procedures. You have to kind of work within those constraints. And then that's, typically the workarounds I found to that is basically instead of splitting these processes, trying to put these automations or these updates in the same place where it's happening. If it happens to be Apex Trigger, then we'll update Apex Trigger to manage this type of assignments potentially, and try to work through the problem so that you don't split up into different areas. Right, because once you split into different areas, you have to remember that you're still operating in the same transaction, right? Once you make an update, the transaction still continues. You do process builder, you do the workflow, you do flow, you do another flow, and a trigger went before that. All of that is within the same transaction, within the same context.
I agree, but the problem I have is that the error messages for the Process Builder, to me, is nebulous. I mean, the other day, I built a formula in the Process Builder, right? I was able to save it, and the formula in the criteria was off. I had like an extra space, but I was able to save it. And of course, we activate it, and we're wondering why it's not working, and we're going back, and we're trying, and this is going on and on. But in a declarative, in the workflow, you'd hit something. When you hit syntax, and that's what so I was allowed to save a formula in Process Builder that would have never passed. I would have never been able to save it as a workflow.
Well, in the process, that's, I think, you kind of hitting there a little bit of context of Process Builder. I know that you're probably getting you might have getting during runtime some type of a flow error saying, okay, some generic flow failed. But you really don't know what it is. It's really what failed is Process Builder, not a flow. but you're getting this flow exception in the creator's email box, usually. But it doesn't tell you anything. And that is one of the, I actually have an idea out there posted. I don't have one right now, but I do have an idea posted a few years ago to Salesforce, try to fix this so that you give a little bit more descriptive errors on process builders and flow as well, because that's just not telling you anything useful.
Which, to be honest, is one of the reasons why I say don't ditch your workflow rules for process builders just yet. There's a lot of work Salesforce needs to do on that, on PB and flow.
Yeah, this comes from a little bit of a historic context, is because how the process builder came around is when you make these builders out there, yes, you graphically drag and drop things and it's all nice, but behind the scenes, Salesforce really building this elaborate XML file, and it's actually flow that running. You just don't see that. You don't see this flow, you don't interact with it. You interact with a process builder UI, which may build one or more flows behind the scenes, which you're not aware of. And these XML files, they get corrupted, they get sometimes messed up. It is coming from the old acquired product called Firefly that Salesforce acquired back in like 2009, 2010. And then that became Process Builder and Flow today.
And I'm also going to throw one more thing out there. So Spring 19 is going to be a big change for the Flow Builder. Any big changes, we know, I mean, Classic to Lightning is never 100% perfect. We've been told that old flows are going to render perfectly in the new Flow Builder. Not necessarily. Okay. So this is definitely a volatile time that, always just be mindful of the changes you're making at your local level compared to the changes Salesforce is making along the way. You may be doing the right thing and Salesforce doesn't end up supporting it just yet because, oh, whoops, they didn't fully develop it yet. Stay tuned a couple releases.
I'll throw out just one more thing. One more thing in favor of workflow rules, and they're guaranteed to be bulkified. Where process builder, you can definitely put yourself into things that don't perform. So that's all I'm going to say.
I 100% agree with you, Corey.
I agree. But at least with the workflow rules, I was able to build a formula where it triggered like 3 seconds. I was able to put in a delay, or you could put in a validation rule that you can't, check 2 check boxes at the same time. You can manipulate it. But with the process builder, I don't see it unless I'm missing something. I really don't see where I can really manipulate it. Kind of it's driving the bus. But thank you. I appreciate it. My second question was, is anyone familiar with CPQ and CML? Has anybody rolled? We have Conga sign. Just curious if anybody was familiar with it. No?
You might put a question out on Answers to see if you can find some reason. There's a CPQ group in Chatter as well that you could join and see if you can get some.
I did. I did join. I was just curious.
I can also offer up, if I were going to do a CPQ project, and I was looking for a vendor to help with that, Code Zero would be one that I would add to my list to investigate. They're out of Atlanta.
Yeah, no, we're working with them.
Okay.
Funny you should say that. We're working with them. It's great, but there's a lot of moving pieces. So,
there is. My understanding CPQ is not easy, no matter how many times people tell you it's easy. I think it all depends on your sales process and your product model.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
So the only other thing I can say is good luck. I hope it all works out, and I hope that you can come back and school us on things that you've learned.
Well, I think I may be creating a CPQ user group in my area. If I can't find one, I'll be creating one.
I think it's a fantastic idea.
I think with you being in New York, you're in New York, that is absolutely needed.
That might be the first one
Yeah.
of its kind, right? I've never heard of such a group. So
That
maybe
would
you're
be a new
blazing a
one.
trail if they go for it.
So, Aaron, you have user group leaders on this call. How can we help you do that? I'm dead serious. How can we help you make that happen?
Yep.
Let me investigate it a little bit, and I'll definitely get back to you guys. And thank you for the support. I mean, we're based in, Connecticut and then New York City, so I can, I live more near New York City. So I'll basically travel anywhere as long as I can get the support. But I do think with CPQ, it's needed. But let me do a little investigative work, and I'll get back to you. Thank you.
Absolutely. We're here for you.
All right, we have time for probably one more question here. Anybody?
I'll ask a question.
Go for it.
Okay, so has anyone used Intact? And this is kind of a two-part question. So if you've used Intact and you have turned on multi-currency in Intact, and all of the documentation says that when you turn on multi-currency in Intact, you should also turn it on in Salesforce at the same time simultaneously so that they can start talking to each other and it's connected. I have a client who they did the first part, turned it on in Intact. A couple years later, now they're ready to turn it on in Salesforce. And I am not comfortable with the guidance I'm getting from Intact that says, oh yeah, you should be able to turn it on and it should be okay. And it's the word should that just really scares the heck out of me. Has anyone done a two-part multi-currency with Intact and Salesforce? I'm going to take silence as no.
No,
Right.
but I haven't heard anything, but I'll ask around.
All right. Well, I'm going to cross my fingers because we need to start making some progress on it. And I'm hoping that we just don't bring everything to a halt. All right. Thanks, all.
All right. Any other questions?
For those who haven't seen anything officially notated, Spring 19 preview release notes come out on the 17th. That's why 17 was in my head, in case anybody was wondering.
Nice.
Thank you.
Since December is super chilly, something to warm up with.
That's right. Any other questions? All right. If not, we'll go ahead and end the call there for today. We appreciate everyone joining in and helping out and asking questions. Again, we'll post this recording out to YouTube, and you'll see links go out to Twitter and the community. So thanks everyone for joining, and have an excellent weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.